How has your work been affected by the pandemic? My work has been changed dramatically. Thinking through how to move the church into functioning as a worshipping, witnessing community without any physical gatherings during this time has been exercising my mind over the last few months. When I say it has been exercising my mind, I mean my brain has been running like a computer processor at full capacity, with lots of apps open, but everything running slowly. Or to give you a different picture, I felt like a car with the engine spluttering on an almost empty petrol tank and the wheels spinning in the dirt but getting no traction. Dealing with so much change at once has been overwhelming, and things keep changing quickly. I need wisdom for my work. How has the pandemic changed your work, whether paid or voluntary? What questions have been exercising your mind? How do I set up a workspace and work routine at home when I don't have a study or an office? How do I work from home and help with my children's online schooling at the same time? How do I study at home without the stimulation of seeing my classmates and teachers? When my business works on-site and face-to-face, how do I move everything online? When can I get back to work? Will I still have work at the end of the pandemic? Will my business survive? Can I retain all my employees? What government support is available? Let's turn to the book of Proverbs for some wisdom about work. First, though, I must issue a disclaimer. We have many first world concerns about work, such as job fit, job satisfaction, job status, the value of work and the danger of overwork. Other parts of Scripture help us reflect on these issues, but not the book of Proverbs. So what do we learn about work from Proverbs? The Theology of Work project, which you can look up online, looks at the theme of work in every book of the Bible. Here is a snippet of what the writers say in introducing the book of Proverbs as it relates to the theme of work. Godly character, that is, wisdom, is essential in all of life, including work. A glance over the Proverbs demonstrates that the book has much to contribute to work. Many of the Proverbs speak directly about the workplace activities of the ancient Near East, including agriculture, animal husbandry, textile and clothing manufacture, trade, transportation, military affairs, governance, courts of law, homemaking, raising children, education, construction, and others. Money, which is closely related to work, is also a prominent topic. Many other proverbs cover topics that apply significantly to work, such as prudence, honesty, justice, insight, and good relationships. We might add that Proverbs envisages both men and women involved in a wide range of daily work. In fact, to anticipate the final sermon in our series, Proverbs ends in chapter 31 with the depiction of a wise woman engaged in all kinds of work. But you'll have to come back in 3 weeks for more about that. So Proverbs pictures the daily work of men and women as diverse, with no apparent hierarchy among different types of work. Any ethical job done with integrity is valid. So it doesn't seem to matter very much what kind of work you do. Of course, there are other factors to consider, but for those of us who spend a lot of time agonizing about whether we're in the right work or studying for the right career, that's an important and liberating observation. The book of Proverbs is less concerned with what work you do than with how you do it. We see that in 2 ways. First, the broad focus on character in the book of Proverbs tells us that God is more concerned with the kind of workers we are than with the kind of work we do. There are some proverbs about the kind of work we do. Skillful work leads to advancement. Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. It is wise to attend to basic provisions before comfort. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. On the whole, though, Proverbs is much more concerned with the kind of attitudes we bring to our work. As we've seen earlier in our series, wisdom is not just about shrewd actions, but also about godly character. To give one example, are we people of integrity and trustworthiness in our work? The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favour with him. I remember seeing in the Mexico City street markets we used to shop at, among many honest traders, the occasional vendor who kept their hand on the scale when they were weighing produce for customers. I didn't tend to go back to those stalls. The strong emphasis on character in the book of Proverbs tells us that God is much more concerned with the kind of worker you are than with the kind of work you do. Second, whatever your work is, Proverbs says be diligent, not lazy. The most prominent theme in Proverbs with regard to daily work is actually the contrast between work and laziness. So we'll spend some time on it now. Are you ready for today's piece of Bible trivia? Two contrasting terms, the sluggard and the diligent, are found in the Old Testament only in the book of Proverbs. The portrayal of the sluggard or lazy person is both comic and tragic. It begins in our reading from chapter 6. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Consider these comical verses from chapter 26. A sluggard says, "There's a lion in the road, a fierce lion roaming the streets." As a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard turns on his bed. A sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it back to his mouth. A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 people who answer discreetly. Derek Kidner pithily writes of the lazy person in Proverbs that they will not begin things, finish things, or face things. Laziness has consequences. It is irritating to work with lazy people. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so are sluggards to those who send them. Have you had the experience of asking someone to do something and they put it off and put it off for no good reason? Have you been that person? Lazy people bring dishonor to their families. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Lazy people are dissatisfied. A sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. Have you noticed that people who take responsibility for themselves are generally more satisfied in life? Laziness can be destructive. One who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. Inattention to workplace safety can have tragic results, can't it? Laziness leads to poverty. I went past the field of a sluggard. past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. To balance that observation, Proverbs also recognises those who are poor through injustice. An unploughed field produces food for the poor, but injustice sweeps it away. In Proverbs, oppression of the poor is an offence to God. Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their Maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honours God. So the rich should not look at the poor and say they are poor because they are lazy. The rich should be generous and take care that they do not oppress the poor or make their wealth unjustly. In contrast with the sluggard, the diligent person, like the ant in chapter 6, is someone who is self-motivated, works hard, plans ahead, and provides for the future. So whatever your work is, Proverbs says, be diligent, not lazy. Let's step back for a moment. I want to say a word about how to read the Proverbs. These sayings are most often paired in contrasts: diligence versus laziness, honesty versus dishonesty, planning versus hastily taken decisions, dealing justly versus taking advantage of the vulnerable, seeking good advice versus arrogance, etc. The binary contrasts between what is wise and foolish, righteous and wicked, make it easy to read the Proverbs in an absolute black and white way. But we need to remember what kind of literature we are reading when we look at these sayings. The Proverbs are not laws, guarantees, or promises. They are generalized observations about how life in God's world normally works. They are generalizations that God has endorsed by including them in Scripture to help us live wisely, but they are still generalizations. If we absolutize the Proverbs, we will have nothing wise to say to the hard-working poor, to the righteous who suffer in this life, or to the faithful parents whose children reject Christian faith or go off the rails. Now let's come back to the general observation that hard-working diligence is better than laziness. Here are some further thoughts from the Theology of Work project. Modern economies, at least in the developed world, may mask this effect in the short term. In good times, when virtually everyone can find work, the lazy worker may have a job and appear to do nearly as well as the diligent worker. Likewise, in economic downturns, and at all times in many emerging economies, a hard-working person may have no more success than a lazy one in finding a job. And at all times, rewards for hard work may be blunted by discrimination, seniority rules, union contracts, bosses' favoritism, nepotism, golden parachutes, flawed performance metrics, ignorance by managers, and many other factors. Does this make the Proverbs about hard-working diligence obsolete? No, it does not, for two reasons. First, even in modern economies, diligence is usually rewarded over the course of a working life. When jobs are scarce, it is the diligent workers who are most likely to keep their jobs or find new ones faster. Second, the chief motivation for diligence is not personal prosperity, but the fear of the Lord, as we've seen with the other virtues in the Proverbs. We are diligent because the Lord calls us to our tasks, and our awe of Him motivates us to diligence in our work. In the New Testament, we find a similar emphasis on attitudes to daily work, with a fresh Christian motivation regarding the one for whom we ultimately work. Hear these words from Colossians chapter 3, directed to slaves, but relevant to all workers. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything. And do it not only when their eye is on you, and to carry their favour, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. On Pentecost Sunday, we remember that the New Testament adds another dimension to all our work. We are called to promote the gospel in all we do, and so participate with our whole lives in the unfinished task of making Christ known to the world.